Welcome to the water table, where I'm on a quest to taste every sparkling water in the world. And today we're in Scotland. I'm sitting in my hotel room here. And while I was in Scotland for a couple of days, I thought I would try out a few of the sparkling waters. Today I'm going to try out Strathmore. And this one's kind of an interesting water for a couple of reasons. And we'll dive into those. In every one of these reviews, I talk about the story of the water source, the story of the water brand, the company around it. And then also we're going to do a tasting where we'll taste it and I'll give you my first reaction to the water. So let's see. Notes I jotted down here about the source. I apologize in advance for not always getting the pronunciations right as I'm going on these waters from other countries, and I don't necessarily know the right way to pronounce it. Even though I do look it up and try to get it right, I don't get it right all the time. So the source is the Vale of Strathmore. It's near Glamis Castle in Forfar, Scotland, and it's bottled at the source, as best as I can tell. The Vale of Strathmore is Scotland's largest underground aquifer, and it has this certain kind of sandstone called Devonian sandstone. And I don't really understand, to tell the truth, all the differences between the different types of sandstones, how much of a minerality difference is from one to the other, but we can definitely tell what shows up in the water, and that's what we're going to check out together. This is classified as a spring water and not a mineral water in terms of the language that I read on here. And what's interesting about it is in the United States, according to the total dissolved solids, the amount of minerals that are in it, that usually gets a number. And if it's over 250, it could be called a mineral water in the US. But the European Union has different standards, different rules for what constitutes a mineral water. And this one is not using that name for one reason or another. But in the US, I think this could easily be labeled a legitimate mineral water. So the story of the brand itself, it began its commercial production in the 1960s. And it was owned by A.G. Barr, the Scottish company behind Irn-Bru, but I don't actually know what Irn-Bru is. And the label still carries the A.G. Barr name, that best that I can tell. But A.G. Barr announced in March of 2025 that it was going to discontinue Strathmore, citing that the brand had really struggled to compete with some of the other up-and-coming brands and the other ones that are just out there in the same marketplace. And the idea of closing their Forfar site, and it put 23 jobs at risk. Good news, though, is that there was a Welsh premium water brand that acquired Strathmore in July of 2025, and it committed to keeping the bottle at source in Scotland. And this is a best-selling water in the UK in the trade hospitality area. So hotels and certain restaurants and pubs. In fact, I got my bottle here at a hotel, and I got another bottle of it at a restaurant. So those are both the places. You know what was really interesting? I'll just tell you as a quick aside, when I was at a restaurant and I asked if they had any sparkling mineral waters, they said that they did. But the one they said they had was a very popular brand name in Scotland. It's one you can find in almost every grocery store and gas station. And then when they brought the bottle out, it was this. That's really interesting. It's like in certain parts of the United States, if you go into the South and certain parts of the US and you say, I'd like to order a Coke, and they say, what kind of Coke? You want Pepsi? You want Coca-Cola? You want 7-Up? So Coke had become just a standard term for soda. It's like the word Kleenex for tissue. And I'm just wondering if that's not part of what Strathmore was struggling with. That there are a couple of key brands, really one big brand in Scotland that has become perhaps so ubiquitous that it makes it hard for others to compete. I'm not sure. I don't know the whole Scotland business landscape, but it is really interesting. Another thing that's really interesting about its history is Glamis Castle, which is the closest notable landmark near this spring. And it is the setting that Shakespeare used for Macbeth. Okay, I don't know if that makes the water taste any different, but I think it's fascinating. And so let's talk about the water itself before I pour some here. It's going to have a total dissolved solid of 453. That's reported right on the label. And in Europe, they don't actually call it total dissolved solid. They call it dry residue at 180 degrees Celsius. And the reason that they do that is because that's how the laboratory determines the total dissolved solids in the water, is they basically cook the water and all of the water evaporates, and then there's this powder left, and they test the powder to determine the different amounts of minerals that are left in it. That's how they get the TDS. One thing that I find fascinating about that method, as a quick aside, is that it's not foolproof. There are some things that will not survive 180 degrees Celsius. There are some things that contribute to the taste and the flavor of a water that might disappear. And so that doesn't actually show up in TDS. So a lot of people, when you talk to water experts, they say that the taste of the water is primarily the minerals, the total dissolved solid, and maybe the carbonation level and the pH level. And while those are the big players, there are other possible ingredients that don't survive the testing method. And I'm going to do a whole video on that in the future because I'm just learning about it, just trying to figure that out. So 453 TDS, the minerals, it's lighter on the minerality overall, 145 on bicarbonate, and then it's 75 calcium, 15 magnesium, 2.2 potassium, tiny bit of sulfate and nitrate, and minuscule amount of fluoride, hardly even recognizable. And there's no note of sodium in this. The label does list carbonate rather than bicarbonate, and I don't actually know what that means. It's unusual labeling from what I've seen on other waters. So maybe it's a European thing, but I've seen bicarbonate on other European brands, so I just don't know. The pH is actually not published on the label, and I checked out the brand website and I didn't see a pH level either. But we're going to see moderate calcium and moderate carbonate. I guess I say just carbonate instead of bicarbonate, but it's not going to be a heavy water, and the sulfate is super low. It's one of the lowest that I've seen as I've been doing this. Carbonation is added. I'm expecting it to be something medium, but who knows? Because I've tasted this once and I tasted it with a glass of ice, and really cold water, you lose some of the taste and even the carbonation is impacted. When I open it, it is not an aggressive carbonation at all. Hardly any bubbles even appear. And sometimes when you open a bottle like this, the bubbles come up right away. Other times you open it, and then as the air kind of connects with it, you start to see the bubbles grow. But I'm not seeing any of that. So let's go ahead and pour. And there we see some carbonation. I still want to learn more about why carbonation works the way it does, but even now, you cannot see a ton of bubbles, very tiny bubbles. And oftentimes when you pour a water, you're going to see the bubbles start to appear along the glass here, and that is not happening. So I'm expecting something really light, but who knows? I could be surprised. Yeah, no strong smell. Super dainty bubbles. They're really mild and dainty, and I'd say on the lighter side of carbonation, but not like a flat soda or something of that sort. There's still a carbonation there, and it fits. It creates for a pleasant taste. I like it a lot because I like a carbonation that you can feel on your cheeks. I actually like really strong carbonations. That's why I like some of the waters from Mexico, like Nicaragua and Topo Chico. And this is almost like a UK mild, gentle, like a Hilden, if you taste that. But the carbonation is a little more aggressive. And Hilden is a British water that's in fine dining. You'll find it some other places. So it fits in that category. I can see why this would be liked by restaurants and pubs and nice hotels. It fits well. It's a good, pleasant beverage, and it's something I will drink whenever I see it available. I've definitely picked this if it were on a list of options. There you have it. That's my review of Strathmore.